Millie ji.
Nice to have you two here. I'm not sure. Can you guys hear me?
No.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for staying back for our session. If you want to come ahead, great, because I will open the floor for a few questions if you have towards the end of the session. We are going to talk about Gargi's new book, Tiger Season, that we published at Penguin Random House India in September last year. And it's a beautifully produced book, but beautifully written book first. And I think very apt for the times, although it's a novel, it has a story, it has very interesting characters and some action in between. But it also touches upon some very relevant themes through the story. So we'll get into all of that, but I did want to first start with Gargi's life, early life, her growing up, and how she came to Delhi and entered journalism and writing later. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your early days.
All right, thank you so much for that, Millie, and thank you for having me here. In fact, it's my first time in Odisha. Would you believe it? When I was reporting with NDTV, many times there were assignments in Odisha, but somehow they never came to me. And of course, we had a reporter here, but I've been really wanting to come, of course. And Shimli Pal is, one of the places that I really do want to visit, and hopefully that's going to happen this year. But yes, so I got into journalism because I was passionate about wildlife, environment. As a young child, I read various books growing up. Of course, Jim Corbett's books are very famous. They're all based in my state, Uttarakhand. But so all those adventure stories would really appeal to me. And then after college, I did economics, but I didn't want to do an MBA. I think I said that earlier during the session. And I joined NDTV to do reporting. I thought it's something that's more interesting as a career. It appealed to me more. And I'm very blessed and lucky that in my career at NDTV, I got a chance to do what I love in this report on wildlife, report on environment, travel to so many parts of the country, see our jungles, our natural wealth that India has. And we're very, very lucky and blessed that it is something that needs to be, really protected and loved, because we're, as I said, we're a poor country. Despite that, the fact that we've managed to protect so much of our wildlife and our forests is really, really incredible. And even today, I think we really have to work hard to protect it, because now the talk is all about climate change, and we all know that forests is our protection against climate change. So that's kind of like my early life and career in a sense.
I did want to ask you a little bit, about these two phases in your life before we get into the book and talk more about the book, which is your new life as a writer. It's been a few months, few early months maybe, but you've had some events, discussions, you interacted with new readers. How has this journey been for you?
It's been very interesting, and I'm very writing this book was a chance for me to share a lot of those experiences one has had on the ground. Earlier in the panel about women reporters and women journalists, we were discussing our experiences on the ground, and there's so much that we come across. So in this book, I wanted to portray some of those aspects of wildlife reporting and tiger conservation that I've experienced. And so many people, when they ask me about it, they ask me about the book, they ask me about the characters. It's been fun discussing that with them. In the book, when you'll read it, I focus a lot on man-animal conflict, because that's a big issue in India currently. We're seeing more and more of it around our wildlife sanctuaries and wildlife reserves. So in this book, in a fun way, in a light-hearted way, in a not too preachy a way, but I've tried to bring out those aspects of that I think need talking about.
Millie, let me share you one information news. Being a chairman of the company, we are now entrusted for a responsibility for development of safari in Uttarakhand. Okay. And I'm here sharing dais with you. So I would like to add one question with Millie, that
Sure.
What kind of conflicts you have come across while writing this novel? Like policy conflicts are there when you attack, or when you write some sensitive topic like tiger does two things. Animal love is one aspect, and attack is another aspect. How do you balance the conflicts between those
Right.
things?
Well, that's a very interesting question. So, in one of the inspirations for the book was this episode that actually happened at Ranthambore, in which there was this particular tiger called T24 Ustad. He was a very famous tiger. You know how in Ranthambore these tigers become very famous and everybody photographs them.
Yeah.
So he had actually he attacked and killed a forest guard, and that was the fourth person that this tiger had attacked. So the forest department then took the decision to remove him from there and send him to a zoo in Udaipur. Now it led to this massive reaction among people, tiger lovers, and it, on one hand, it was very nice to see that people are so passionate, they love tigers so much that they're coming out onto the streets, Bangalore mein, Lucknow mein, Delhi mein, everybody's like save Ustad and all. But at the same time, I felt it was a very shehri attitude, you know, because you didn't have any sort of
Yeah.
understanding for the challenges on the ground. The fact that there are villagers who live outside of these parks who are feeling threatened, who are feeling scared. The forest department itself is, and we expect them to, you know, go around guard our forest just with a lathi.
Yeah.
You must have seen, you know,
Yeah.
just with a lathi there in the forest, and then to have a tiger that has killed for you, it was very important to remove that tiger. So I did report on it.
Okay.
I spoke to all the, you know, top conservationists from Valmik Thapar to Anish Andheria, Ulas Karan, and all of them supported the decision of the forest department to remove this tiger. So I reported that, and I got heavily trolled and criticized, and all kinds of insinuations were made about, you know, the reasons I reported, you know, supporting the forest department in this particular move. So I felt there's not that understanding among people. You know, you go to the park, you take your photos, you go away. You're not living there, so you have to understand the whole ecology, the whole area holistically, because that also is conservation. The people there looking after them is also a part of the
And
conservation.
communication.
And you know, and मान लो अगर आपने उस टाइगर को वहां छोड़ दिया और फिर लोगों को इतनी नाराजगी हो जाती, गुस्सा हो जाती कि दूसरे जो टाइगर्स हैं या जो वाइल्ड लाइफ है, they'll be hostile towards that. अगली बार जब उनका कोई पशु को मार देगा टाइगर, तो उसको पॉइजन कर देंगे.
Oh.
You know, rather than go and approach the forest department, because they'll be angry with the forest department. So in a more light-hearted way, I've tried to bring all these issues in my book so people can understand this.
Yeah, you know, this is one of the incidents in the book, actually, you know, and maybe
Like in a
and the
different
core,
way, different names, but
yeah, like an episode, you know, which leads to, you know, further action in the story and what happens after. But I didn't know this aspect about your life, you know, because I focus on you as a writer, and I've seen a bit of your journey. Um, so I'm going to come to you in a bit. I have one more question for Gargi, but we'll hold that thought on environment and writing, because I think it is so important for all of us. Like Gargi said, it's not only about one side or the other. We have to coexist, the humans and the animals, and how the community tackles with various situations on a case-to-case basis, given what is needed at that point, given the situation is how things will be determined. So Gargi, you had a clear idea, you know, I remember when we met for the first time at an event, and you had the plot in mind. You'd also done a bit of writing. You had this story very clear in your head, and with the backdrop that you chose. Was it a conscious decision to tell the story, you know, through the medium of these characters, you know, and set in jungles?
yes, it was an idea, and then of course I worked on it. It took some time. It happened also pre-COVID. I began, and I guess COVID during that time it gave me some more time. Not that news ever stopped for us. There was no, you know, holidays, like everybody was sitting at home, but we had to go to work every day, even during the COVID time, lockdown and all that. But yes, I worked on the book during that time, and you know, once you start writing, somehow things take shape, and then you decide which way to go. And there's a little bit of Bollywood also in the book, because even at NDTV we did several tiger campaigns, Save Our Tiger campaigns. It started with this number 1411. There were only 1411 tigers left in the country, and that really, you know, captured people's imagination, and people felt very worried and concerned about the fact, because let's face it, it's India is the country that has tigers. We have 70% of the world's wild tigers, and that again is an amazing accomplishment if we think about it. And it's the only country you can come and see tigers the way we can over here. There are 13 tiger range countries, but they have like a handful, and you really can't see them in the wild. Nothing like India has today. And tigers is such an animal that world over people love tigers. A child sitting in Sweden, in Finland, उनको कभी tiger दिखेगा नहीं
Numbers are
wild
so
में. But
less.
they, if you ask them what is your favorite animal, they'll say tiger. And where is the tiger
They've
found?
never seen
In
it.
India. So in that sense, I think it's a great source of pride that, and tiger symbolizes our wildlife as well. And thanks to saving the tiger, we save a lot of our wildlife as well. So we did this campaign with that in mind. I got to report a lot and I got to travel to many places, not to Odisha, but many other places in the course of covering the Save Our Tigers campaign. And so many of those experiences is what when I sat down to write. So a lot of people I met, stories that I heard, so all that I've written down in this book.
Let me ask you one more thing.
Sure.
It was my turn to ask you a question, though.
As Millie said that it's a story of a coexistence and balancing it out. And once government is imposing or expanding so much money, like in one state I know they have 450 crore in Uttarakhand to invest because I am the partner there. Okay, for development. So once policy, development, funding, and forest, and changes are all around forest. So as a writer, how do you see the balance of coexistence happening there? Because as a writer, you are studying the aspect because environment is changing. So how the balance is making itself
The
stable?
balance is getting disturbed because now in India we have all these tiger sanctuaries where we have great number of
That's a
tigers
very
like
thin line.
Corbett and Ranthambore. And now the idea is to have landscape so that the animals can move from one part to another part, be it from Corbett National Park to Rajaji National Park, be it from a Ranthambore through Bundi to other parts of Rajasthan. And, so that is what you have to facilitate to prevent the man-animal conflict. पर अब जो ये जो डेवलपमेंट हो रहा है उनके रास्ते कट रहे हैं if you have roads that are being built through forests through various
Huge
tiger
challenge,
landscapes.
huge challenge.
It's a huge challenge. And again recently the road in Maharashtra that got built with animal underpasses, now it's being talked about a lot and everybody's saying how amazing that we made it, but I know the amount of struggle and fight that went into activists, NGOs fighting to say that no, spend that extra money and make these underpasses so that the animals can have that space to go. And there was a lot of resistance from the government, because it obviously made the project cost a lot more. But end of the day, I think we've managed to protect these wild spaces for so long. We need to do a little more and continue that protection. And as I said today, the biggest threat is climate change. And our biggest protection against climate change is these forests. And these forests are
Very
where the tigers, where the elephants, where the rhinoceros, and all the other wild animals are.
So, that is also one of the things, the conflict and the shrinking space. On one side, we say that we want to increase the population of animals, but is there enough space, and who's encroaching
Exactly.
upon whose homes is one of the things we were talking about earlier too. And you tackle that in the book because all these conflicts come from because sometimes spaces are shrinking, forests are being cut down, and there isn't enough space for animals to move around, and therefore sometimes you see them coming out on roads, and either people getting scared or there are accidents also where animals get hurt, which is quite tragic. I did want to ask you about the role of nature and importance of writing around these themes, because you're a writer too, and these are very important themes not only for us as adults but also for children and future generations, because this is the world that we are bringing them into.
Frankly, nature brings a lot of changes in poetry and poets' perception itself. In fact, I'm fortunate that last 6 months, a series of poems I wrote only on poetry. And the series name is Prem Mein Ped. And the one liner I'll tell you that Prem Mein Pratiksha Ka Naam Barish Hai. So, such kind of things. Well, when you travel in jungles, you find that one tree is entangled with the another tree, and you can't make them apart till death even. So that kind of lesson nature gives you to be a joint soul, integrated soul. A human has to learn a lot from nature, and you can see that the tree will be looking towards water and climbing towards water all the time. So प्रेम में पेड़ झुकता चला जाता है, विनम्रता आप वहां से सीखिए. So a number of things has to be learned from nature, in fact.
No, absolutely. I think it has been happening over the years, and of course, there is a need and for more and more awareness, I think, for the new generation because the more we take them into nature, they see things firsthand, like RQ was saying. It's not only about seeing them on films or reading about them as characters of a, Jim Corbett story, but, actually seeing them and, experiencing that moment, right? You're face to face with an animal is also very special. And one of the aspects that, maybe the government has used in the past and is also part of the book is the use of celebrities, use of campaigns that you talked about briefly, but also using celebrities to promote these causes because they have a huge following and they do help in some ways to create more awareness about these issues. So tell us a little bit about that aspect in the book.
All right. So yes, as at NDTV, I said that we've used celebrities for our campaign for Save Our Tigers. Amitabh Bachchan was our campaign ambassador, and various other stars also joined in. Dia Mirza, there was Manish Paul, various other actors, and helped support the campaign. We took them to the parks to actually film them in the jungle, looking at the tiger, or at least trying to, going on the safari, etc. And end of the day in India, I think we all, the masses or the public just adore the movie stars or the cricketers. Those are the two, characters that have huge mass following. Post COVID, thankfully, there's a more appreciation, I think, of scientists and doctors as well. But people are very starstruck, and it's great to have a celebrity be a part of this campaign because we can talk about environment and wildlife, but those who are interested are the ones who listen to you. But if you get an Amitabh Bachchan, then those who are interested in Amitabh Bachchan will listen to what he has to say. And, they get a little more interested. We had MS Dhoni support our campaign, and we took him to Uttarakhand to meet the chief minister. He is from Uttarakhand originally, as I hope everybody knows. I'm talking about my state. But so the chief minister made him an honorary wildlife warden, and it was a big news. And I think it brought a lot of attention to the tiger campaign. So similarly in the book also, I have a Bollywood star, and I've used that in a light-hearted way to also make the story a little more interesting. But yes, our celebrities have a huge following, a huge power. So if they talk about these sort of things, I think the young people will listen more and be more concerned.
Absolutely. I don't want to divulge too much about the book because I think all of you should read it, read Tiger Season, and let us know what you think. So I have one last question, and after that, if any of you have any questions, we'll take that up. So Gargi, what next? As a writer, you have begun this journey, and I think you're enjoying it too because it also helps you connect to a wider audience and new people that you meet along the way. So, what more can we expect from you in the future?
Well, I think I would like to write a follow-up to this, and in this particular tiger season, I've talked more about Rajasthan, Ranthambore. Although the park is called something different, but that is what I have focused on. But I would like to focus on different parts of the country. I still think there's a lot that and I hope young people will read it and get more interested in other wild animals, other aspects of conservation.
Sundarban is also one.
Yes, Sundarbans, of course. I mean, I've been to the Sundarban thrice, never seen a tiger, spent 6 days on a launch in the Sundarbans. The closest we came to a tiger was when the forest department took us on an island. And then it was very muddy, and my camera person, she sank into the mud, and she was knee deep in the mud, and we're trying to pull her out when the forest guard said, "Oh, dekho, wo tiger ka pag mark." We're like, and that was not the time we wanted to think of a tiger nearby. When you're stuck in the mud. But at that time, I also met a lot of people, villagers again, who had been attacked by tigers. So, there's a lot of that aspect there. The forest department is doing work to, promote ponds, fishing in ponds, ducks and,
Medical
poultry, etc. So that the people will go less and less into the forest, into the Sundarbans, where they come under attack by tigers there. So yes, I think I have a lot more stories to tell people, and I hope people will encourage me with.
No, absolutely. I hope you keep on writing and we keep on publishing you. Any last words from you, Yatish? Because then I'm going to ask audience for questions.
Nothing. I'll only add, Gargi, what Gargi was saying, that I work for an NGO called Bandhav Sialda, and we work for only tiger attack victims. And
Wonderful.
you will be surprised to know that the numbers are very high.
Absolutely, and we need more NGOs and more people working in that.
High. So what we are doing there, that we are making pond and we are supplying some medical leaf, and they are developing as a farming those leaves, and they are selling it out as a medicine. So those things
Great.
are.
Yes. So all these
Sounds
things
like a
need to be
great
thought about.
initiative. I think we need more and more of this collaboration, the community and the forest department
Absolutely,
coming
yes.
together to preserve this relationship, and hope the numbers keep on growing in India and you see many more of the animals on your safaris. And on that note, if you have any questions, please raise your hand and we'll pass the mic to you. Can we get him a mic, please?
Thank you. Now, I am Ananta Kumar Giri from the Madras Institute of Development Studies. Two queries. One is lion, the wildlife, and also the people. So in your book, what kind of lives of people that you describe and the relationship between them? Because many times the wildlife conservation is not sensitive to the needs of communities. My second query is that have you also put some poetry about tiger, songs of tiger, and have you yourself written a poem about tiger?
No, unfortunately, I have not written any poem on tigers. But yes, sir, thank you for that question. And that's just what I was talking about, the fact that tiger conservation or animal conservation has to take into mind the communities that live around these forests and sanctuaries, and keep their concerns also in mind. So if there is a tiger that is attacking people, that tiger has to be removed from there. I mean, there's no two ways about it. There cannot be any sort of chest beating or, oh, poor tiger. You have to remove that tiger, because the people's interests need to be taken care of. And also you have to think of all the other tigers in the park as well. Because if you don't take care of that particular issue, then the community becomes hostile to conservation. They become hostile to tigers, they become hostile to the forest department. So it's very important that their interests be taken into mind, into consideration. So that's what I spoke about, that, people in the towns, they have this sort of, save the tiger, poor tiger, we have come into its space. Yes, of course, all that may be true, but still you're not living in the forest next to the tigers. So you have to have some sort of sympathy for them as well. There was this other incident that happened in Maharashtra where there was this tigress as well, Avni, she killed 13 people, the poorest of the poor people. And she was living outside. A lot of our tigers live outside protected areas, and it was sad. She had 2 cubs and everything, and but she killed 13 people. And still in Bombay and all, people are writing, poor Avni, this image of a mother protecting her children, which, all of us love that ma wala, image and all. But you cannot, I mean, how are we allowing 13 people to be killed and still saying, no, it's okay? I don't want any of my relatives killed. So how can we expect it's okay? Tribals hain, poor hain, so they're, people are being killed, it doesn't matter. So yes, absolutely. I think there needs to be more sensitivity to that. And we can't just, concentrate on that one animal. We need to think of the communities as well as the other animals in the forest.
Any other questions? If you have a question, please raise your hand and we'll come to you.
Yeah, hi ma'am, good afternoon.
Hi.
So what's your say about the melanistic tiger? Those are being found in Odisha. I think that is due to there suddenly came up, or
No, I think they were always there, and it's a very unique gene that is prevalent in Simlipal, and now you're seeing them more on the camera traps. So that's been created a lot of buzz and interest about these about the melanistic tigers. You have those black panther leopards that are found in Kabini as well, and you have in Shimlipal. Though I don't know how easy it is to see them because Shimlipal is it's a vast forest, and it's the safaris. I've not actually been there, so I don't know how easy. I don't think it's as easy as it is in Ranthambore and Bandhavgarh and some of these areas. But tiger tourism and wildlife tourism, I think, is also a very important aspect of our forest management, because if more people come to the parks, you see more, you're more interested. Also, you know what's going on over there. NDTV in the past did a story. I mean, you have, I suppose, a little bit respect cultures as well, but the tribals in Shimlipal have this practice of going into the forest once a year and killing wild animals. And I think NDTV reported on that, and the chief minister got very angry and banned that reporter at the time. But it is what it is. I mean, it's against what our laws are, but at the same time, I understand there are a lot of traditions that's going to take time. As you said, we need more NGOs who are working with them, providing alternatives. Maybe they can do something symbolically. In the Northeast also, those hornbills, now they have, it replaced the original ones with plastic ones. So, things like that. I think cultural changes are needed, and it'll happen slowly. It can't happen immediately. But yes, it's very exciting, the melanistic tigers and those. There's a picture, I think, a video of 3-4 of them in one frame, which is quite amazing.
I think 10 they have found it. Yeah.
Yes, quite amazing.
Hope we reserve more. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Hope we see more. And I think social media also helps to create awareness. Now you see that with various campaigns, whatever the causes for people are, but it helps to put the word out. Thank you so much, Gargi. It was wonderful talking to you about
Thank
Tiger
you.
season. Congratulations again. And I hope you keep on writing many more books in the future too. And thank you, Yatin, for launching the book and
Yes,
being part
thank you
of
so
this
much.
session.
All right,
And thank you to all of you for being this wonderful audience this afternoon. Thank you.
So I take this opportunity to thank our sponsors, which is OCAC, ONGC, Indian Oil, RV University, Calorex, ABBP Live, and Big FM. And then our chamber partner, Fiki Flow, social and charity partner, Smile Foundation, Yardley, Jindal Steel and Power, and Oxford Bookstores. Further on, Swasti Premium and Team, our outdoor partner. So, shortly after, our guest Sandeep Bamzai would be here, and then we would begin our session on role of media in creating values of nationalism. media has helped Media has helped evolve the definition of nationalism in today's times. And I feel privileged to invite our next speaker, the veteran journalist Sandeep Bamzai ji, on the stage. So let's welcome him for this insightful session. Sandeep Bamzai. He's a news junkie, having worked across all major news platforms in positions of eminence for the last 40 years. He began his career as a cricket writer with the Statesman in Kolkata. He's worked in Kolkata, Mumbai, New Delhi with the biggest media houses. The last 2 decades have seen him on the news frontline as national business editor at Hindustan Times, executive editor at TV Today, editor at Mail Today, editor in chief and COO at Financial Chronicle, and currently CEO and editor in chief of independent news wire IANS. He's also worked at the Indian Express, the Illustrated Weekly, Business India, and edited Dalal Street Journal, a life he describes as a fulfilling journey. An alumnus of the prestigious St. Columbia's in Delhi, he graduated in economics from the University of Calcutta. He has written 4 books, including Guts and Glory, The Bombay Cricket Story, Deconstructing the Accession, Bonfire of Kashmiriyat and Princeton, How Nehru, Patel and Mountbatten Made India. He's also written Gilded Cage, his recent book, which was launched last year. He's now working, no, no. So he's already released this book called Gilded Kashmir. Over the last 20 years, he's been focusing on the space where politics and economy merge. So I feel privileged to be having this conversation with him today. I hail from the same home state as he is. So I hope you will all thoroughly enjoy this conversation and put forward some meaningful questions towards the end of the session.
Thank you for that introduction. So happy to know that you're from my state.
Hello. So, nationalism is deep rooted in our history and culture. So, our scriptures, they often delineate India as one, and our songs, they sing praises of our mountains and rivers. And then, there is this explicit, you can say, integration that we felt during the pre-independence and the post-independence era, right? And this feeling of nationalism has deepened over time. So much so that today it pervades every sphere, like from our science and technology to our schooling, to our startups, our books, our literature, our music. So at the onset, I would like to know from you, what is it to be a nationalist in today's times? What is the meaning of being a nationalist? And if nationalism were to be a spectrum, on what end of it would you place an average Indian today? And also, how is it relevant to a technology-led, corruption-free India of today's times? So, yeah, your views on it.
So, nationalism, if you're an Indian, I guess it's inherent. In most nations, people are nationalists. Indians, as a rule, are more nationalist, I guess, than most because we actually fought invaders and colonizers for over 1,000 years. So, from the slave dynasty of Qutbuddin Aibak, 1,000 years ago, we've had Afghans, Ibrahim Lodi, Safdar we've had the Mughals. Before that, we had Timur Lang and various other people who invaded India, pillaged India, raped India, and then went back. Then you had the Mughals who actually settled down. And then, of course, 200 years of colonization through the British. And if you go back in time, I think the role that media played during the freedom struggle and in the main, in the years running up to the freedom struggle, people like Lokhandya Balgangadhar Tilak, he had a newspaper called the Kesari, he had another newspaper called Maratha. They were at the forefront, at the cutting edge of molding people's opinions, disseminating information for people who were literate enough to understand what was happening. And not many people are aware, but Gandhiji himself, when he returned from South Africa, was actually inspired by Lokmanya Balgandhar. And that's been the case actually throughout India. There is Mathrubhumi, which is still a newspaper in the south. It played a major role in the freedom struggle. Uh, Sarojini Naidu's son, along with a few others, started a newspaper, I think, in 1938 called the Deccan Chronicle, which is still there. And that is a child born out of the independence movement. Young India, which Mahatma Gandhi himself used to write in, National Herald, which Panditji started. So there are a whole legion of newspapers and media all across the country which not just aspired for independence, but were ambitious enough to put forth the views of the politicians of the time. I think Young India has some history with Lala Lajpat Rai also, who was brutally murdered by British police. So there is a long, hoary tradition that exists of media playing a pivotal role in independence, in espousing the cause of nationalism. Over time, as a news person who's been in this game for over 40 years, I find that, and it's sad to say, I find that there is a false nationalism, what I call a false nationalism, which is being used across the spectrum. You mentioned spectrum. It is being used across the spectrum. I'll give you my own example. When I came to INS 5.5 years ago, I found that Sayyid Ali Shah Gilani, the Hurriyat leader's granddaughter, was working in and she had a cabal of 5, 6 such people working there. And I was astounded that will you call Sayyid Ali Shah Gilani a nationalist? Will you in your right mind hire his granddaughter, who's obviously not going to be a nationalist? In fact, from what I now hear, she used to actually say that when Kashmir becomes independent, she would be his first friend. So I threw out all these people and the people who had brought them in and started with a clean slate. So I think just as Ram, we are national. So I don't think one needs to make a huge production for being a nationalist or being religious. We are all Hindus. If you're a Muslim, then you have your own religion, but if you're a Hindu, we have our own religion. And you know where I come from. I'm a Kashmiri Pandit. I think, as I said at the morning session also, I think the maltreatment of Kashmiri Pandits in what is perceived to be a Hindu majority state is abominable. And it has been the case for 30 years, and no government, right, left, or centrist, has ever cared or given a damn for it. So these camps still exist. Shanati still exists outside Jammu. There are camps like this, people who are economically backward, who cannot afford to go deeper into the rest of India, look for jobs. They still live there in appalling conditions. So nationalism has many hues. Globally, we've seen that when nationalism and religion combine, then it's a combustible cocktail. Bosnia Herzegovina is a classic example. Ethnocentrism was practiced, ethnic cleansing was done, and ethnic cleansing was done in the Valley of Kashmir on the intervening night of January 18 and 19. Ethnic cleansing was was done, ethnic cleansing was done in the run-up to that in 1990. So all this has happened before our eyes. We may be too young, but we've all seen this, and the sad part is that nobody cares. So I think nationalism is inherent and intrinsic to every Indian, whatever be his religion, whatever be his ideology. The fact that partition created a theological state uh, for Muslims, which was predicated on Islam, means that the people who stayed back believed in the ideal and idea of India. They believed in the nationalism of India as it was espoused by our founding fathers. So we can't run away from this fact. India is not a theocratic state. India is a republic. It has been a democracy, while democracies have failed all around us in the subcontinent. If you look at Pakistan is a failed state. Uh, Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Burma, Afghanistan. You look at all our neighboring states and they're chaos. But to Pakistan's credit, late last night I was looking at Twitter and I found that Imran Khan's PTI, despite having him jailed, despite the army putting pressure, was I think leading in 141 seats. So the streak of democracy or the streak of nationalism in however or whatever form and shape it is alive everywhere.
Hello. Yeah, so we are all nationalists at heart, but we must reject this for nationalism, this fake brand of nationalism that is just, you know, leading us nowhere. What you said leads me to my next question. So recently I came across a speech by Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar. So I don't know if you've come across it. So he says that patriotism and devotion to God are two sides of the same coin. And he says that because of this insecurity built around secularism in our country, people had to, we lost our spiritual identity. People had to kind of minimize their religious identity to sound more nationalist, to embrace their national identity. They had to let go of what their religious identity was. So as a result, we got spiritually bankrupt, and now we have nothing left to bank on. So what's your take on this? Do you agree with this?
The one admirable thing about Prime Minister Modi is that unlike any politician going back 75 years, he is seen as a Hindu with his own. He has actually managed to aggregate and consolidate the Hindu vote behind him. Otherwise, there is no explanation for the kind of majority that he gets unequivocally, not just at the center, but in various states. Uttar Pradesh is an example, Assam is an example, Gujarat, I can give you many examples. But this has never happened. It is an unprecedented fact. Politicians have one caste, mainly in Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, and even in places like Karnataka, where there are Vokalikas and there are also sort of subcastes, and people vote according to them. But you will find, and I have written extensively on this, that both in the 2014 election and in the 2019 election, as also in the two elections of Uttar Pradesh, the Hindu vote, backwards and forwards, have all consolidated behind Narendra Modi. And this is actually a unique happening in Indian politics. Whether it was Mulayam Singh or Bahanji Mayawati or Lalu Prasad or Nitish Kumar, everybody played the game of a caste bias towards one side or the other. Now you find that whether it's the forwards, which is the Brahmins or the Kshatris or the Thakur, or the backward, and when I say backward, there is the scheduled caste, the scheduled tribe, the OBCs, all of them, and this is proven empirically, have consolidated behind the Prime Minister Modi. So I think this is probably the single biggest differentiator in Indian politics over the last 10 years. Now, you can argue that, sorry to say again, but media has been compromised, unfortunately. And I say this as a media person because I find that a vast majority of media has been completely compromised. I don't think media is reporting the facts as we used to report them for years and years and years. I remember my time with the Indian Express when Mr. Shauri was the editor-in-chief, and his opening line, these are embedded in my memory recesses, his opening line used to be, and this is the time of Bofors and he was fighting the pitched battles against the government of Rajiv Gandhi. Rajiv Gandhi is a liar. Full stop. Now he's writing about the Prime Minister of India. The very next day, he would write a similar piece, acerbic, based on facts against Reliance Industries. So I think that kind of journalism is a page in history. I think I've been fortunate, and I tell my colleagues also, that I've been fortunate that we, at least for a large part, or rather all 40 odd years, one has been a purveyor and practitioner of journalism. But I think journalists these days are lazy, they're compromised, and while many of them used to be compromised by corporates, I think sadly they are now compromised by.
It's a cartel, politicians, and the commerce of it. So, my next question streams from your thoughts only. So, which is now, memory is the ink with which history is written, right? So, whatever people remember becomes history. But the challenge is that people remember selectively, right? And often what they remember is congruent to, the theories and the stories that, align with their vision of life or suits their narrative. And they also discount the faculties of other people to remember and infer and create, right? And this in turn leads to a lot of insecurities, and then the vested interests of people play in, and a catastrophe is seeded because of that, right? So what role will media play? And like you said that media is failing and brutally failing in today's time. So what role, maybe I'll change the question to asking you about independent media, like your media house. So what role can independent media play in creating a balance of stories? People are robbed of a balance of stories, right? So there is no dignity in existence for a certain kind of people because their stories are never told, or they are told with such a parochial outlook. They don't believe that they even exist on the spectrum. They are terribly alienated. So how do we bring these conversations to the mainstream? And so what's the solution to this?
So I find that we as a platform have always been agnostic. And I think ideologies and agendas and even idiosyncrasies cannot be part of media. You may have those ideologies, but I think you have to limit those ideologies to your personality. When you're writing, you have to be completely agnostic. You spoke about the last man standing and stories about them, and how does one proliferate those stories. So, for instance, we have a tie-up with an organization called 101 Reporter. I think they're doing a fantastic job. I don't know how they're surviving, but 5 years ago they came to me and said that we would like to associate with you and we would like to use your platform. I said, this depends entirely on merit. Let me see the quality of your story. And I found that these people are, they have their own It's called 101 report. So they're probably stringers, uh, finding out information from the backwaters of this country. And somebody is then sitting down and writing these stories in a proper manner, and then they're sending it to us. And we found that there is great traction for these stories. Because while we may not have the resources to send somebody deep into the backwaters, these people are doing that. And I don't know whether it's an NGO or I don't know who is financing them, but the quality of the report art is super. And they send a story a day, sometimes two a day, and we give them adequate display because I believe personally, as someone who's heading this platform, that these people should not just be given an opportunity, but these stories need to be told. People who live in the margins, people who struggle, and some of the stories are outstanding about water woes, about it's a vast swath of subjects that they touch upon. They give us stories from Kashmir, from Madhya Pradesh, from Orissa, from Karnataka, Bihar, from all over India. And I think they're doing a fantastic job. And I continue to use their stories because I think that they deserve a larger world. Now, on compromised media, or what is now the euphemism is bully media, I don't watch television. I think television news is beyond redemption. You cannot read it, watch it. So I've completely switched off. Now there are newspapers which, for a large part, remain independent. The Telegraph in Calcutta is one such newspaper. The Hindu is another such newspaper. I think our own platform has been independent and agnostic for a long time. Stories on Mamata Banerjee, stories on the Prime Minister, stories on Uddhav Thackeray, stories on Bhagwat Mann, stories on every politician, and stories from every state are given ample opportunity and a great right. I think the future of media, again, sad to say, is impaired, and I don't wish to be a journalist who's 25, 30 years old, operating. I'm glad that I'm now towards the end of what has been a long career, and for most part, I've had the privilege and the honor of working with some very fine editors before I became an editor myself. I worked with Arun Shawi, as I mentioned. I worked with British Nandi as the illustrated weekly for many years and learned a lot from him. I worked with Ashok Advani at Business India. I worked at the India Today Group for many years with Arun Puri, and I think from everybody I've learned something. But I think these names that I've just mentioned are the last of the Mohicans, and I think I don't see a very bright future, very honestly, and I'm being completely candid. And perhaps that's why I have taken the long form writing in a more aggressive manner, and I'm putting out more books. Because my first book was written as far back as 1997. The second came in 1999. The third came in 2006. And then there was this huge long hiatus till two came in 3 years between Princess Diana and Bridget Kane. And I think maybe that perhaps may be the future, because in both these books, I have challenged the vile and obnoxious revision that is taking place in Jawaharlal Nehru, and I think it is obnoxious to actually do something like that. But in both these books, not a single challenge from left, right, or center, because I have on Princess Diana spent as many as 3 years On this one, I spent almost 1.5, 2 years to write, to research, and like I said, more than anything else, corroborating facts is the most.
First and foremost, you're doing a splendid job with INS, still remaining independent and standing up for those whose stories remain untold. And as you said, the telemedia has turned into a toxic propaganda yielding device. So better to refrain from it.
Actually, I don't, from the prism that I see it, I don't see the need for propaganda. I tell you why. The Prime Minister is enormously popular. I remember 2014 when he launched his campaign. He came to Rewari, which is outside Delhi, and it's a stronghold of army men, former army men, and it turns out a large part of Indian army comes from Rewari. And I realized that day, this is before the election, this would be early 2014, January probably, and General V.K. Singh, who had also joined the BJP by then, the former chief of army staff, was speaking, and the crowd simply didn't want to hear it. And there was this huge, humongous crowd. I was there, I was present there, and all one heard was Modi, Modi, Modi. Everybody wanted to hear the Prime Minister, a man who would eventually become the Prime Minister in another 3-4 months. And I think his appeal, his popularity is enormous. And I don't very honestly see the need for propaganda.
See, the thing is, the answer lies in what you said previously, Sandeepji. So Modi does not, like, his image does not depend on this propaganda. He's a much loved PM and across the world. But it is, the propaganda that relates to ideology and altering history and stuff like that, perhaps. Yeah. So,
I seriously believe that while Marxist religion, Jawaharlal Nehru is completely unfolded. I have done deep dive research on this man, and I have seen his contribution to the cause of the Indian freedom movement. Here is a man who spent 10 years in jail. In those 10 years, he has written the discovery of India. He has written glimpses of Indian history. If Nehru was not a politician, I think he was a literature of eminence, and perhaps he should have got the Nobel Prize for it. If you read the discovery of India or the glimpses of Indian history, I think they're fabulous. And it's a pity and it's a travesty that this man has not been given. Okay, there are acts of omission and commission, but which politician has not had that? And as I recounted in my morning session, there is so much aspersion cost on Edwina and his relationship. Without Edwina Mountbatten, you would have not got independence.
see, this is what the linearization of history, right? We have heroes and we have villains, right? So, what are the perils of it, right? Even with Sheikh Abdullah. So, I read this book, and I think we should steer the conversation towards the book as well because it's a very relevant narrative. And at least for me, I just ingested it in a day, and it was very meaningful. I hail from the state, and we have a lot of misleading narratives, and as a young person belonging to Jammu, so you never know like what really was history, right? So because we were born post 1988, and so yeah. So what I'm trying to say over here is that why like what are the perils of this singularization of narrative, as in the case of Sheikh Abdullah, for example. So in this book you write about him and you say that he was an ardent nationalist in the beginning, and gradually his mindset did taper towards a myopic and exclusive stance for Kashmir. But at the onset he was a nationalist, right? And he was responsible for JNK acceding to India. And also Faiz Ahmed Faiz, right? He wrote in praise of him once. So basically what happened in his life was like initially he was hated by Pakistan or disliked But gradually, like he goes to Pakistan and he receives a grand welcome where poets write poetry in praise for him. And now somehow his image, because of that, his and even Faiz's, right, is maligned in Jammu and Kashmir. So what is this singularity of history and just rejecting people and canceling their contributions? How dangerous is this, and what can media do again, like to reverse this?
I reckon institutional memory has died. Okay, it's buried somewhere. We don't know where, but it's buried somewhere. People don't want to look at institutional memory, or people don't want to look at facts. A narrative is placed before people, and I think people succumb to that narrative. Now, to explain Sheikh Saab, in 1944, Muhammad Ali Jinnah came to Kashmir. He spent almost 52 days in Kashmir. And he met he met the Muslim conference, he met people from National Conference, he met people of all political hues. He gave a huge speech at the Jama Masjid. He gave another speech elsewhere where he propounded the two-nation theory and said that Kashmiri Muslims should join Pakistan. He tried his level best. 52 days is 52 days. He didn't come for a week or 10 days. He spent 52 days talking to all sorts of people, talking to the common man, talking to the Maulvis, going to Hazrat Bal, going to the Jama Masjid, giving speeches, but he cut no ice with it. The reason Sheikh dodged him for those 52 days. Sheikh met him, welcomed him, but he dodged him. Sheikh always believed that a theological, theocratic state is not the way forward. People don't understand this or probably don't know this. Jawaharlal Nehru created something called the All India States People's Conference. Even while he was in the Congress party, he created a parallel body. This body was used to further the agenda of freedom within the princely states. Okay? Strangely, Gandhiji would have none of it. He believed that princes were the trustees of God. And he believed that the princes should not be touched. But Nehru's idea and ideal of India was that not just British provinces, but all 565 princely states should amalgamate with the new India. Sheikh Abdullah was made vice president of this same AISPC. And AISPC was used as a stalking horse in various princely states. So there is Nehru himself going to Nabha, there is Nehru himself going to Faridkot, there is Nehru himself going to Kashmir. So again, this is a fallacy that Sardar Patel was responsible for corralling the princely states. Yes, he was responsible for the integration of the princely states. But the front running in getting the princely states to breaking the princely states was always Pandit Nehru. These are facts which have now emerged, which I have written about in my book. Sheikh's problem was that once he became Prime Minister, please understand, there was a Prime Minister within the Union of India. He was Prime Minister of Jammu and Kashmir. So somewhere he thought of what I have written about, the concept of an Eastern Switzerland. That I can be a small nation hemmed in by these large powers, China, Russia, Pakistan would be a neighbor, India would be a neighbor. But by that time, it was too late. The instrument of accession had been signed. And Sheikh, imagine if Sheikh would not have been there and Nehru would not have been there, we would have never acceded. Kashmir would have never acceded to India. And yet the same Jawaharlal Nehru imprisoned Sheikh Abdullah in 1953. So that says a lot about that person and his character. That when he found that Sheikh had secessionist tendencies, he was picked up by the Intelligence Bureau in Jammu and Kashmir Police in Gulmarg. And from 53 to 1975, till the Indira Gandhi Sheikh Abdullah Accord was signed, he remained in isolation, and for many years
Long
he remained
period.
in jail in Kodaikanal. And yet he came back to the fold, to the Indian fold in 1975 when Indira Gandhi and he had an accord. So Sheikh was a Sheikh was a volatile character, but Sheikh was a larger than life, very nationalist character for most part. He got swayed by various people. He had his chief advisor, strangely, was a communist called BPL Bedi. His wife was a foreigner called Frida, and these two people were always in his ear. So you start getting ideas when you realize that you're the prime minister of Jammu and Kashmir, that all the other states are chief ministers. So I guess he became a secessionist, and that's when he was incarcerated by the same Jawaharlal Nehru who went to Kashmir to fight his case as a lawyer, all in the span of 6 years. In 1947, Jawaharlal Nehru was imprisoned by Hari Singh in a place called Domel, where he was going to represent Sheikh Abdullah in a case of sedition. And the same Nehru then, realizing that he has secessionist tendencies, jailed him
Imprisoned
in
him.
1950.
So yeah, like this strange relationship between Nehru and Sheikh Abdullah, right? From camaraderie to estrangement, and then an antipathy towards each other, and then a confounding reconciliation, right? So all this, this evolution in their relationship, how did it catalyze volatility in Kashmir? It was just two individuals, right? So can you just throw more light on all of these things?
When Sheikh was incarcerated, nothing much happened. I can give you another.
Why did they reconcile? Like then they again brought him back and made him visit Pakistan, right? So how
Sheikh was the tallest leader. You cannot, it's an inescapable reality. You cannot run away from that. When Sheikh was incarcerated, Bakshi Ghulam Mohammed was made chief minister, then Bakshi lost his job because there were corruption charges and so on. But Sheikh was the natural heir to any throne in Kashmir. I mean, it was a given. You could call it a default mechanism. So by 1975, when things were not going well, Gandhi realized that Sheikh had to be brought back. But I think the difference between the Kashmir of those days and the Kashmir now is that Wahhabi, Salafi, weaponized Islam has changed the complete complexion of the valley. And believe me, people might not know this, but the Prophet's hair lies in Hazrat Bal. The Prophet's hair mysteriously disappeared in the early 60s. And there was rioting, arson, and obviously it was a big deal. But even then, there was no hurriyat. There was no freedom. This came only after, and it's a well-planned conspiracy, because on December 6, 1989, I think, if I remember right, soon after VP Singh became Prime Minister, Rubaiya Saeed was abducted by JK. She was the daughter of the prevailing Home Minister of India, and India succumbed at that time and freed those terrorists. And that is the inflection point. And then Farooq, who was the chief minister, mind you, quits on the 18th of January in the morning. The call for stampeding the Hindus is given in the night of January 18th. Okay, and Jagmohan comes as the governor of Kashmir on the afternoon of the 19th. But in that intervening night of January 18 and 19, the Kashmir Pandit is stampeded because there are knocks on his door that if you have daughters, then they should be prepared for nikah in the morning. This, I think, nobody remembers, nobody bothers, nobody cares.
Yes, indeed. So it's this intricate history of Kashmir. You very meticulously build this narrative wherein, you talk about how Hari Singh's, his predilection in acceding to India, and then Nehru's cherry picking Kashmir as, a brand for his secular nationalism, and then the vested interests of UK and US, Jinnah's obsession, and then Sheikh's, this wavering mind, all of these things. And you've also hinted at, the political orphanhood of Kashmiris in general, but you've pointed out to the Kashmiri exodus. I want you to talk more about Kashmiri Pandits. Like, in the foreword, Dr. Karan Singh writes that, during the Dogra rule, the Kashmiri Pandits had flourished, but history has not been kind to them and they've never mentioned or credited them. So how did Kashmiri Pandits perceive the Dogra rule? And also, did any subscribe to Sheikh Abdullah's initial views on secularism? So there's no. So can you throw more light on this?
I think Sheikh, for most part, in the initial years was always the nationalist, he was secular. And given his friendship with Nehru and the fact that I mentioned that he was vice president of the United States People's Congress, he had a larger worldview than most Kashmiri politicians of the time. Many of his associates, that includes Bakshi Ghulam Muhammad and others, saw him wavering as he. I think to explain his wavering mind, you have to understand the Praja Parishad movement which took place in Germany. Shama Prasad Mukherjee and I think there was another gentleman who was the father of these two people were at the vanguard of the Praja Parishad in Jammu, and I think somewhere Sheikh Saab found that the channel between Hindu Jammu and Muslim Kashmir Valley was growing. And I think that is when he thought of this independent Eastern Switzerland. And I don't think this Eastern Switzerland included the province of Germany. I think in his mind, and I've explained, there are various permutations and combinations which were offered by him, to him, by Pakistan, by various other people. And he actually thought that he could create a cocoon for himself, headed by the great powers around him. But mind you, it is not just Sheikh. Maharaja Hari Singh thought on exactly the same thing. Maharaja Hari Singh had a guru in his court, Swami Sant Deo, who was basically a Rasputin type of character, and who used to keep, sorry to use the word, but pissing in Maharaja Hari Singh's ear, saying that Dogristan bane और लाहौर से डोगरों का झंडा फहराएंगे. So it is not, it's Kashmir's history is so complicated. Remember that India became independent on August 15th. Kashmir acceded to India on October 26th. And that too, once the raiders knocked out the Mahura power station and landed virtually at the doorstep of Srinagar. And then we managed to sign the instrument of accession. And I don't know whether you've seen Sam Bahadur. Sam Manekshaw is sent with BB Menon to get the instrument of accession signed from Maharaja Hari Singh. And then the Sikh regiment is sent in Dakota to save Kashmir. First they said we have to recognize it, repel the radio. So Maharaja Hari Singh, for a large part, always thought that he could remain in power. And this Sandeep character was busy telling him, please understand the state of Jammu and Kashmir on August 15, 1947 was larger than France. Undivided Jammu and Kashmir was larger than France. When I say undivided, I am saying Aksai Chin, Karakoram, what is now Pakistan occupied Kashmir, parts of Ladakh, etc., which have been occupied by China. That state was bigger than France. If that state had remained independent, and as Sandeep kept telling Hari Singh, कि डोगरों का झंडा लाहौर से फहराया गया. So go back in history. Maharaja Ranjit Singh gave the Dogras Kashmir for 75 lakh rupees. Now 75 lakh rupees may be a large sum of money those days, but Maharaja Ranjit Singh ruled Kashmir. And he handed over Kashmir for 75 lakh rupees to Ghulam Singh. And then the Dogra dynasty came into being. But to answer your question of the Dogras and the Pandits, they've never got one. Never, ever. In fact, the Pandits would probably seem to be closer to the Muslims of the valley rather than the Dogras. Although Ramchandra Clark, a Kashmiri Pandit, was the chief minister of, he was the chief minister. Maharaja Hari Singh was, no, actually he was prime minister under Hari Singh. So he was a Kashmiri Pandit, and he, along with Sandeep, also advocated independent Kashmir. And in fact, he plotted, as Princess Khan, my other book tells you, he plotted with the Nizam of Hyderabad, the Nawab of Bhopal, and Lord, the Viceroy before, Lord Wavell, the Viceroy before Mountbatten. He plotted and plotted and plotted to keep Kashmir independent. So Kashmir has this history. It is not about Sheikh Abdullah wanting to become independent. Hari Singh always wanted to be independent. And imagine, you would have had a country called Dogristan.
Yeah. So many characters in this sinuous, convoluted narrative.
People talk about Palace Intrigue, and we see it in the movies also. Kashmir was a true
Tragic comedy.
a true tragic comedy. And I think it's more akin to a Shakespeare play, probably Hamlet. And if you look at Kashmir's history, it could be as if Shakespeare has written Hamlet.
These were exactly my afterthoughts when I read your book. You answered one question that I'd been meaning to ask you about Sandeep, because it's like his shadowy figure and how he poisons Hari Singh Ji. So then there's this other character, Ramchandra Kak, right? So he would have gladly yielded to Jinnah's vision of acceding Kashmir to Pakistan. So can you just highlight his role into
Kak
this?
was director of Brit. And because of the influence of English woman in his household, he was extremely close to the Commissioner of Police, to the Army Chief, General Scott, General Webb. So this was actually the British resident, the Commander-in-Chief of the... remember, Kashmir was independent, so it had a Commander-in-Chief, it had an army, it had a police chief, it had a resident, British resident. And Kak was a prisoner, a captive of all these people. And his thought process was constantly Churchillian. And Churchill, as I pointed out in Princess Khan, wanted to keep a bit of India. So, as part of that Balkanization process, can you imagine a map of India with an independent Kashmir, an independent Hyderabad, an independent Junagadh? See, the partition of India did not take place as the partition of India. The partition of India was limited to the partition of Punjab and the partition of Bengal. These are the only two states that were partitioned. Burma became independent long before India achieved independence. So the vivisecation of India would have been complete if Kashmir, Bhopal, Hyderabad, Junagadh, you would have had East Pakistan, South Pakistan, Central Pakistan within India. In fact, Junagadh actually had a referendum. Before independence, the Nawab of Junagadh had a referendum where the people voted to accede to either India or Pakistan. And guess who the Prime Minister of Junagadh was? Zulfikar Ali Bhutto's father. And in that referendum, 97% of Junagadh voted for India. So the referendum that was to take place in Kashmir did not take place only because the whole of Kashmir was truncated by the time October 26th. Because Pakistan had then occupied through the raiders what is Muzaffarabad, Mirpur, and the rest of Gilgit and Baltistan. Gilgit and Baltistan actually is a shocking story, which will take me 10 minutes to explain, where the Brits played devious and diabolical role. So, even today, the international border and the line of actual control are delineated in such a manner that the Punjabi-speaking part of Kashmir is isolated from the Kashmiri-speaking part. This is a misconception. Let me clear this misconception. People in Pakistan occupied Kashmir do not speak Kashmiri. They speak Punjabi.
Yeah, I've met so many on conferences. Yeah.
With the concept of Sufism, which has been practiced in Kashmir Valley forever. Maybe not anymore, but forever.
Yeah.
The Pakistani occupied Kashmiri is not a Kashmiri speaking.
Yeah.
And it is said that between Sheikh Abdullah and Jawaharlal Nehru, it was decided when the ceasefire, United Nations ceasefire came about on January 1, 1949. The war was fought from October 26 till December 31st of 1948, 1.5 years. So these are facts from history.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we tend to ignore them or we do not present them the way they need to be presented. Pakistan occupied Kashmir.
Yeah.
Kashmir is not Pakistan occupied Kashmir. He is very happy. So this is one of the greatest misconceptions.
Yeah.
The Mirpuri, the Muzaffarabadi have nothing to do. Kashmir as a bloc, unified Kashmir, was Pakistan, what is Punjabi speaking Kashmir,
Yeah.
Dogri speaking Jammu, Kashmiri speaking Valley, and Buddhist Ladakh. Those are the four components of a unified Kashmir.
Yeah, I think this is so true because I've had the privilege of getting exposed to these people on a few international conferences that I was part of. And I met so many people from the POK, and contrary to what I had imagined, they turned out to be people exactly like I was, and my parents were, and my grandparents were, and a lot of people who migrated from there live in Jammu, and including my family. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
A lot of army men in the Pakistani army come from Mirpur, and they have always been a martial class.
Yeah.
Is similar in Haryana, outside Gurgaon. A lot of army men come from Rewari. So Mirpuris, Kashmiri Muslims don't want to have anything to do with Mirpuris.
Yeah, and they were so friendly. Like I remember having a conversation with a few professors there. A VC was also there, and he was like, "Hey, girl, you're from Jammu," and they were so happy. And then, very very pleasantly, they told me that they how one could trace their roots to Jammu. So they said, "Does this still exist in Jammu? Can you send me a picture?" And they owned to the fact that they were converted when they were left over there. So their language, their heritage, what they eat, their proverbs, their idioms are exactly the same. And with respect to my family, right? So we belong to an area where, refugees were given, shelter and property. And so over there, strange things are happening because, people get nostalgic about their past. So our grandparents, for example, and, even youngsters today, so they are told stories about how it was back then, right? So there are folk songs emerging, singing glories of Mirpur and Muzaffarabad. And, there are perpetually these very interesting conversations between people who say that, this is what it is like to be a Muzaffarabadi and this is what it is like to be a Mirpuri. So, yeah, it's very sad what happened. And I wish that, media did play a better role in articulating what the story really was.
You know, in 1999, when the Kargil conflict took place, and I think we had more casualties uh, in officer cadre in Kargil than we had either in the 62 war against China or the 47-48 war against Pakistan or the 65 Centigon operations against Pakistan or for that matter IPKF operations in Sri Lanka where there were large number of casualties. Kargil has seen the maximum number of casualties in the opposite cadre ever in Indian military history. I used to live in Bombay during those years when the Kargil conflict was fought. People were completely impervious. Nobody cared. So partition also is a painful memory for North India. In the southern part of India, there are no memories of partition because it never took place. If Hyderabad and Sardar Patel hadn't happened, if the Nizam had continued to remain independent, if Operation Polo had not happened, if Sardar Sahab had not surrounded Hyderabad and it had become independent and would have then been called South Pakistan like East Pakistan, then maybe the memories would have been more painful. But that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So partition is a phenomenon
North.
experienced by Bengalis and Punjabis and nobody else. And of course Kashmiri. But Kashmiris probably like the idea of POK rather than. See, in Bengal, I don't know whether people here are familiar. In Bengal, even today, in a household, there is East Bengal versus Mohun Bagan. If you follow football, Mohun Bagan is the West Bengali, East Bengali is the East Pakistani or the Bangladesh. So that pain is experienced. Similarly, in West Punjab and East Punjab. Partition is a phenomenon which took place only in two states, a united Bengal and a united Punjab.
Yeah. Somehow it's down to our DNA. I don't know. We did not grow up to see the partition, but we cry. The saddest songs appeal to us, and we just feel like a character in that story. It's just so true for every youngster out there in Jammu, particularly these people whose families have been refugees, including mine. My final question to you would be about Gilgit Baltistan, right? So in chapter 4, Kashmir War, you outline how GB was lost to India, and then the dialogue crumbled between Liaquat Ali Khan and Nehru. And then the cabinet was planning on a full blown war, but Nehru was advised by Mountbatten, and maybe it was naive of him to advise him thus that, if he escalates the matter to UN, they would alacrity very quickly ask, the Pakistanis to withdraw the raiders, but it did not happen. So, can you please explain, like, how did this catastrophe unfold, and what are the repercussions we are feeling today?
So, Nehru did not go to the United States. Let's be very clear. Mountbatten, as Governor General of India, advised Nehru to go to the United States.
He followed his advice, right?
He followed his advice. Nehru unilaterally did not go to the United States. Mountbatten, after being viceroy, when he defended office on August 15, remained Governor General of India. Sri Rajagopalachari followed Jawaharlal Nehru as Governor General. Nehru was in many ways an idealist. People say that he was a pacifist. although I disagree with that because he conquered Goa in exactly the same manner that Sardar Patel conquered Hyderabad. Sardar Patel was not alive in 1961, he died in 1950. So Nehru could not have been a pacifist because he surrounded Goa. And please understand, this is a Portuguese colony. Nehru is part of the non-aligned movement. Nehru is a statesman figure on the global, a major figure on the global map, along with Nasser and Sardar and other people. Despite all the pressure on him, he did exactly what Sardar Patel had done, and he took a Portuguese colony, an independent Portuguese colony, and he conquered it and amalgamated it into India. Long after independence. 14 years after independence. So I don't know whether Nehru was a pacifist. Idealist, maybe. So it is Mountbatten's advice that you take this matter to the next. In retrospect, I believe that whatever happened with COP was the right thing because, as I explained just now, the Kashmiri Muslim doesn't have anything to do with that, nor does Jammu want to have anything to do with it, incidentally. And Jammu is predominantly Dogra and Punjab. And now, of course, also
Migrate.
So, history will tell you that it was perhaps a judgmental error. It was not his, it was on the advice of Mountbatten. Equally, when this case was fought at the United Nations and the Soviet Union repeatedly vetoed it in the Big Five, Kashmir became the centerpiece of debates in the United Nations for years and years and years. The United Nations created an office. It is called, United Nations even has an office in Srinagar today. It's called UNCIP, United Nations Commission for India and Pakistan, to resolve Kashmir. The United Nations decided, under pressure from United States and Great Britain, to appoint Chester Nimitz. I don't know whether you're aware of who Chester Nimitz is. Chester Nimitz is Admiral Nimitz. He fought the great battle of the Pacific for the United States against Japan and won. Chester Nimitz was named plebiscite administrator for Kashmir by the United Nations. I have highlighted in the book how Nehru tore Chester Nimitz and the United Nations proposal to shreds. Imagine a US admiral of the eminence of Chester Nimitz being sent as a plebiscite administrator to the state of Kashmir, independent part of independent India, having acceded constitutionally, legally, fairly. What havoc that man would have made. There is a letter written by Nehru to the United Nations Secretary General, I think it is last outdoor at the time, where he thrashes Chester Nimitz and puts an end to this business of plebiscite activism. So we unfortunately lack institutional memory and to ignore facts, but we do so at our own peril. If you do not look at history, you do so at your own peril. And that is why propaganda is sadly defeated.
So no accountability to Nehru for having yielded to the advice of Mountbatten. Okay. So I guess we've had a very intriguing conversation. Lots of learning for me. It just feels like I'm still in my childhood drawing room with my father and mother, and they're telling me the story of Kashmir. I would like to conclude this session with a few lines by poet Faiz Ahmed Faiz. And it's ironic, he said it in praise of, it's contested, but they say that he said it in praise of Sheikh Abdullah. So Faiz is a much larger figure than, how he is viewed today. and see this as a tribute to honest media journalists in the past, and also as a message to people who are upcoming journalists, right? So it's a very, very powerful poem. I'm just going to read a few lines. बोल के लब आजाद है तेरे, बोल ज़बां अब तक तेरी है। बोल की लब आजाद है तेरे, बोल ज़बां अब तक तेरी है। तेरा सुतवा जिस्म है तेरा, बोल की जान अब तक तेरी है। बोल ये थोड़ा वक्त बहुत है, जिस्म ज़बां की मौत से पहले। बोल ये थोड़ा वक्त बहुत है, जिस्म ज़बां की मौत से पहले। बोल कि सच जिंदा है अब तक, बोल कि सच जिंदा है अब तक। बोल जो कुछ कहना है कह ले, बोल जो कुछ कहना है कह ले। Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody.